The secret to rebuilding collagen has nothing to do with the jar sitting on your bathroom counter. I know that sounds strange, especially with everything you have seen online about collagen creams and collagen powders. Billions of dollars a year go into that industry. And look, some of those products actually help. But stick with me, because by the end of this video, I am going to show you something far simpler. A meal. One you can make in your own kitchen in under 10 minutes using ingredients you can find at any regular grocery store. And that meal gives your body exactly what it needs to rebuild collagen from the inside out. Skin, cartilage, joints, all three from one plate. Here's something worth sitting with for a second. Your body already knows how to build collagen. It has been doing it since you were a child, every single day, without you ever thinking about it. The construction crew is still there right now, inside your skin, inside every joint you have. Nothing about that crew disappeared. What changed over the years is the delivery of raw materials to that crew. And that piece, the raw materials, is the part almost nobody talks about. Your dermatologist rarely has time for it in a 15-minute appointment, and the label on that jar of powder is not exactly designed to bring it up either. Over the next 25 minutes or so, I am going to walk you through why your collagen production slows down as you get older, what your body is actually asking for to speed that process back up, and why skin and joints are really two separate construction projects that just happen to use the same building material. That last part surprises a lot of people. Then, near the end, I will hand you the exact morning meal I personally use, ingredient by ingredient, with the amounts, so you can start tomorrow morning if you want to. Stick around until the end, because there are a few small mistakes almost everyone makes with collagen. Simple habits that can quietly cancel out everything else you are about to learn today. I will show you exactly what they are and how to fix each one in seconds. Let's get into it. Let's start with something practical. Run through this list in your head while you're watching and be honest with yourself. Fine lines around your eyes or your mouth that showed up faster than you expected. Skin on the back of your hand that takes a beat too long to snap back when you pinch it. Nails that split or peel more than they used to. Hair that feels noticeably thinner, especially near the part. Stiffness in your knees or your fingers first thing in the morning, before you've even had coffee. A knee or a shoulder that pops or cracks more than it used to, even when nothing's actually wrong with it. A cut or a scrape that takes longer to heal than it did 10 years ago. Did a few of those sound familiar? Here's what's fascinating about that list. Every item on it, from the skin around your eyes to the cartilage in your knee, traces back to the exact same protein, collagen. Most people file all of that under simply getting older and move on with their day. Age does play a role here, and we'll get into that in a minute. But collagen is a specific, measurable protein, and when your supply of it changes, your body tells on itself in some very particular ways. The skin symptoms and the joint symptoms feel like they belong to two completely separate conversations. Turns out, they're the same conversation, just happening in two different rooms of the same house. If you found yourself nodding along to 2 or 3 of those signs, stay with me. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to explain exactly what's happening underneath the surface, why it happens, and what your body is actually asking you for. And near the end, I'll hand you something practical you can start using tomorrow morning. I'll admit, when I first started digging into this years ago, I assumed skin and joints were handled by completely different systems in the body. Different departments, different budgets, so to speak. I was wrong about that, and it took me a while to admit it on camera. Turns out the skin on your face and the cartilage cushioning your knee are, at a structural level, cousins, close cousins, built from the same family of proteins, using the same raw materials, made by the same type of cell. So when someone tells me their skin has lost its bounce and, separately, their knees have started talking to them on cold mornings, I hear one supply chain issue showing up in 2 different locations. And that's genuinely good news, because it means you don't need 2 separate fixes. You need one, applied consistently. That's exactly what the rest of this video is going to walk you through. So why does this actually happen? There are 2 forces at play here, and they stack on top of each other. The first one is simply time. Starting somewhere in your mid-20s, collagen production begins slowing down by roughly 1% a year. That number sounds tiny, and for a while it is. Nobody panics over 1%, but 1% a year, compounding, year after year, adds up to something substantial by the time you reach your 40s, 50s, and beyond. It works like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it day to day. You notice it the morning you look down and the tire is flat. Women get an extra wave of this around menopause, when estrogen drops and collagen loss can accelerate sharply for several years before settling back into that slower 1% decline. Here's the second force, and this one barely ever comes up, because it's less of a medical story and more of a kitchen story. For most of human history, people ate the whole animal. Skin, tendons, cartilage, the tougher cuts, bones simmered for hours into broth. Every one of those parts is loaded with the exact amino acids your body uses to build collagen. That was just what showed up on the plate, generation after generation, long before anyone thought of it as a health strategy. Modern diets gradually dropped almost all of that. We eat the muscle meat, the fillet, the boneless breast, the trimmed loin, and the skin, the cartilage, and the bones get left behind, usually at the butcher counter or the restaurant kitchen. Those parts were the actual raw material your body used to run this whole operation. So your slowdown isn't only about the calendar. The ingredients for the whole operation quietly disappeared from the plate around the same years the factory itself started slowing down. Two forces, pointed in the same direction, landing on the same result. Did you realize that 100 years ago, bone broth was just called Tuesday? Grandmothers weren't chasing a health benefit. They were using the whole animal because throwing away the bones and skin would have been wasteful. We've since turned that habit into a specialty item you can buy for $8 a carton at a boutique grocery store, which honestly says a lot about how far we've drifted from it. That's the piece I want you to hold on to going into the next section, because it explains exactly why the signs you just heard in the last block show up together. Skin, nails, joints, healing time. They're all downstream of the same missing supply. Let's open up the factory and see what's actually happening in there. Because once you understand this, everything else in this video will click into place. Deep in your skin and in the tissue around your joints, there are cells called fibroblasts. Think of them as the construction crew. Their entire job is building collagen all day, every day, whether you're aware of it or not. Right now, as you're watching this, your fibroblasts are working. But a construction crew is only as good as the materials on site. Collagen itself is built mainly from 2 amino acids, glycine and proline, twisted together into a rope-like shape called a triple helix. That's the actual structure holding your skin firm and your cartilage cushioned. Without those 2 amino acids on hand, there's no rope to build. It's that direct. Here's where it gets interesting. Having the amino acids isn't enough on its own. The body needs vitamin C to finish the job, specifically to activate 2 enzymes that lock the rope into its stable shape. Skip that step, and the collagen your body builds falls apart almost as fast as it's made. We actually know this because of history, not guesswork. Sailors on long voyages, eating no fresh fruit for months, developed scurvy, a disease where old wounds reopened and gums fell apart. That was collagen literally unraveling from a lack of vitamin C, playing out in real time. Extreme example, but it proves the mechanism beyond any doubt. Then there's copper, which acts almost like rebar inside concrete, chemically welding individual collagen strands together into something strong instead of something loose and floppy. And zinc, which helps your fibroblasts actually divide and multiply, so you have more workers on the job, not just more raw material sitting around unused. 4 ingredients: amino acids, vitamin C, copper, zinc. Miss any one of them consistently, and the whole operation slows down, no matter how many collagen jars are sitting in your bathroom. Now, here's a question worth asking. If this same crew, using the same 4 ingredients, builds both the skin on your face and the cartilage in your knee, why does one usually respond so much faster than the other? That's not a small detail. It actually changes how you should think about timing and expectations, and it's exactly what we're covering next. Here's something that surprises almost everyone I explain this to, myself included, back when I first learned it. Skin and cartilage share the same building crew and the same raw materials, but they're fighting 2 very different battles. Your skin sits inside the dermis, which is packed with tiny blood vessels. Nutrients arrive constantly, dropped off directly at the fibroblast doorstep, all day long. That's why skin can respond to changes in your diet relatively quickly, often within a matter of weeks. Cartilage, the collagen cushioning your knees, hips, and knuckles, lives in a completely different environment. It has essentially 0 blood supply running through it directly. Instead, it depends on nutrients slowly diffusing in through the joint fluid surrounding it, a process that's naturally much slower and far less efficient. I like to think of it this way. Skin is a garden with sprinklers running across every section of it, all day. Cartilage is a garden that only gets watered when it happens to rain, and rain, in this case, means slow diffusion through joint fluid. Same plants, wildly different watering schedule. Practically, that means your skin might start feeling firmer within a month of consistent effort, while your joints are a longer project, often measured in months rather than weeks. I want you to know that going in, so you don't quit on the joint side of this just because the skin side moved faster. There's real research behind this timeline too. A 2009 clinical trial published in the International Journal of Medical Sciences, led by researcher D.C. Crowley, tested a specific form called undenatured type 2 collagen against the standard glucosamine and chondroitin combination in people with knee osteoarthritis. At 90 days, the collagen group showed significantly greater improvement across every single measurement taken. Interesting detail, type 2 collagen is the cartilage-specific version, the same kind you'd find in the joints and knuckles of an animal, not the muscle meat. So if collagen creams and collagen powders are already out there, why does this whole topic even need a video? Let's go through both, honestly, because the honest answer is that they're incomplete. Start with the cream. Collagen is a large molecule, physically too big to pass through the outer layer of your skin. Rub it on your face, and it sits on the surface, where it can hydrate and create a temporary smoothing effect. That's honestly useful for how your skin feels that day. What it cannot do is reach the dermis underneath and rebuild the structure living there. Wrong location entirely for that job. Now the powder or capsule version, which works through an entirely different pathway. Once you swallow it, digestion breaks that collagen down into individual amino acids and small peptides, glycine and proline among them, which then travel through your bloodstream to your fibroblasts. This route can actually work, and there's solid research behind it. A 2014 study published in Skin Pharmacology and Physiology, led by dermatologist Erhard Proksch at the University of Kiel, gave participants a daily collagen peptide supplement for 8 weeks. The results were substantial. Procollagen type 1, the raw precursor your body uses to build new collagen, increased by 65% compared to the placebo group. Elastin, a related protein responsible for skin's bounce, increased by 18%. Here's the catch. Nobody puts on the label, though. Those amino acids arriving at your fibroblast are only step 1. Vitamin C still has to activate the enzymes that lock everything into a stable rope, the same way I described a few minutes ago. Copper still has to weld the strands together. If those cofactors aren't showing up in your diet at the same time, you've delivered the bricks to the construction site without ever hiring an inspector or a welder. The supplement did its job. The rest of the crew just never showed up. This is the exact gap I want you to walk away from this video with. If you already use a collagen powder, keep using it. Just pair it with the right supporting cast, which is exactly what we're building toward by the end of this video. Before I hand you the meal, you need to know what's quietly working against everything we've just covered. You can eat perfectly for collagen and still lose ground if these 3 things are running in the background. First, sugar. When sugar circulates in your bloodstream, it doesn't just sit there politely. It attaches itself directly onto collagen fibers in a process called glycation. Once that happens, those fibers stiffen and become brittle, almost like old rubber left out in the sun for a few summers. It cracks instead of stretching. That's happening inside your skin and your joints right now. If your blood sugar runs high on a regular basis, which is a big reason why people managing blood sugar issues often notice skin and joint changes well before anything shows up on a standard lab test. Second, sun exposure. A little sunlight is perfectly fine, even useful. But repeated, unprotected exposure switches on a group of enzymes called matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs for short. Their job, under normal circumstances, is cleaning up old or damaged collagen. Under chronic UV stress, they go into overdrive and start breaking down collagen faster than your fibroblasts can replace it. That's the single biggest reason sun-exposed skin, like the forearms and the face, ages differently than skin that's covered most of the time, like the underside of your upper arm. Third, smoking. Studies comparing smokers to non-smokers consistently find meaningfully lower collagen production in the skin, along with elevated levels of those same MMP enzymes that break collagen down. It's a two-front attack, less being built, more being destroyed at the same time. Here's the practical takeaway. The meal I'm building towards supplies, raw material, and cofactors. It cannot outrun a bloodstream that's constantly high in sugar, unprotected sun exposure day after day, or a pack of cigarettes. Fix the inputs, then let the meal do its job on top of that foundation. None of this requires perfection, by the way. I'm not asking you to become a hermit who avoids birthday cake and sunlight forever. Consistency over months matters far more than any single slip. Just know these 3 factors are real, they're measurable, and they explain why some people eat well and still don't see the results they expect. So why morning specifically? I want to give you the honest reason, not a made-up one, because the real answer is actually more interesting than the marketing version you usually hear. Here's what's fascinating. Research on skin cells has found that collagen runs on its own daily rhythm. During the night, while you're asleep, your fibroblasts shift into their most active building mode, actually assembling and installing new collagen fiber. During the day, that construction work slows way down. In other words, the heaviest lifting happens on the night shift. That might make you think the meal should happen before bed instead, but think about it like running a construction site. The crew doing the heaviest building at night still needs its materials delivered and staged well ahead of time. You don't want the truck showing up at midnight while the crew is already mid-project. A morning delivery gives your body the entire day to absorb, process, and stage those amino acids, that vitamin C, that copper and zinc, so they're sitting in reserve and ready when your fibroblasts shift into high gear later that night. There's a second, simpler reason too. After 7 or 8 hours without eating overnight, your circulating amino acid levels are naturally lower first thing in the morning. Your body tends to prioritize putting new incoming amino acids to work rather than just letting them float around, competing with whatever else you ate that day. And honestly, there's a third reason that has nothing to do with biochemistry. Habits that happen first thing in the morning, before the day gets complicated, get done. Habits you tell yourself you'll fit in later, especially later at night, have a way of fading out after a couple of weeks. I'd rather give you something realistic that you'll actually stick with for months than something biochemically perfect that lasts 9 days. So think of the morning meal less like a magic window and more like the loading dock. The real construction happens later, largely while you sleep. Your job in the morning is simply making sure the truck shows up on time. Here it is. The meal itself. Simple, 4 parts, about 10 minutes from start to finish. Part 1, your base. Warm 1 cup of good quality bone broth, ideally one made from knuckle, joint, or foot bones rather than just marrow bones, since that's where the cartilage lives. The same cartilage-derived collagen we talked about a few minutes ago. If you don't have broth on hand, stir 2 tablespoons of unflavored collagen or gelatin powder into a cup of warm water instead, and look for one that lists cartilage as a source rather than skin or hide alone. Either version gets you the glycine and proline your fibroblasts need as raw material, plus a real share of that joint-specific collagen your knees have been waiting on. Part 2, 2 whole eggs, prepared however you like, scrambled, soft, boiled, fried in a little butter or olive oil. The eggs add more of those same amino acids, along with a modest amount of copper. Part 3, and this is the step people skip, then wonder why results are slow. Right before you eat, squeeze the juice of half a lemon or a whole lime over the eggs, or stir it into the broth once it's cooled slightly. Fresh citrus juice, added at the very end, off the heat. This delivers the vitamin C. Your body needs to activate those 2 hydroxylation enzymes we talked about earlier, the ones that lock the collagen structure into place. Part 4, a small handful, about a tablespoon, of raw pumpkin seeds, either eaten on the side or sprinkled over the eggs. This covers your zinc and adds a bit more copper on top of what the eggs provided. That's the whole meal. Broth or gelatin, 2 eggs, fresh citrus juice added at the end, a tablespoon of pumpkin seeds. Roughly 300 calories, entirely from real food, nothing from a jar with a marketing department behind it. Have it most mornings, ideally 5 to 6 days a week. You don't need to be rigid about weekends or travel days. Give it a full 30 days before you judge the results, since we already covered why skin moves faster than joints. Track it if that helps. A quick note or a photo once a week, so you're comparing week 1 to week 4 instead of trusting your memory alone. A couple of practical notes. If you're making broth from scratch, simmering bones and connective tissue for 8 to 12 hours pulls out considerably more collagen than a quick 30-minute stock. So batch cook it on a Sunday and keep a week's worth in the fridge or freezer. And if eggs aren't part of your diet, a couple of tablespoons of pumpkin seeds and a small handful of walnuts can stand in for that portion. Though you'll want to keep the broth or gelatin as the true foundation either way, since that's where the majority of the glycine and proline actually comes from. Let's cover the 3 mistakes I see people make most often with this, so you can skip all of them from day 1. Mistake number 1, drinking a hot cup of coffee right alongside this meal. I know, for a lot of you, that's basically sacrilege, and I'm not telling you to give up coffee. Good thing my wife's around to remind me I said that on camera, because I've been known to forget my own advice by 9 a.m. Just give it 30 to 60 minutes of separation. Compounds in coffee called polyphenols can bind to minerals like zinc and copper in your gut, reducing how much of them you actually absorb. Have your coffee, just not shoulder to shoulder with this particular meal. Mistake number 2, cooking the vitamin C source instead of adding it fresh. Vitamin C breaks down with heat fairly quickly. If you squeeze that lemon into the broth while it's still boiling on the stove, or scramble it directly into hot eggs on the pan, you're losing a meaningful portion of it before it ever reaches your plate. Add citrus at the very end, off the heat, once things have cooled slightly. It takes 10 extra seconds, and it's the difference between an active ingredient and a garnish. Mistake number 3, and this one connects back to something important we covered earlier, relying entirely on a collagen powder or capsule and assuming that's the whole solution. If you're taking a supplement, but your overall diet is still low in vitamin C, copper, and zinc, you're feeding the crew without funding the rest of the job. That gap is exactly why so many people try a collagen supplement for a few months, see modest results, and eventually give up on it. This meal is specifically designed to close that gap, whether or not you're also using a powder on top of it. Small errors, easy fixes. Space out the coffee, add citrus fresh, and cover your cofactors alongside whatever collagen source you're already using. That's really it. None of these require special products or extra spending, just a slightly different order of operations and a routine you're probably already close to having. So that's the full picture. Your collagen production naturally slows down over time. The raw materials for it slipped out of most modern diets, and skin and joints are running on 2 very different timelines, even though they share the same building crew. 4 ingredients, a 10-minute meal, and 30 days is really all it takes to find out whether this makes a genuine difference for you. Try it starting tomorrow morning and actually give it the full month before you decide anything. Skin first, most likely, joints a little further down the road, so don't get discouraged if week 2 feels quiet. That's simply the timeline we already talked about playing out exactly as expected. Come back in 4 weeks and tell me in the comments how your skin feels, whether those morning joint aches have eased up at all, or honestly, if you notice nothing at all. I read every one of them, and I genuinely like to know either way. If you tried a version of this with a substitution I didn't mention, tell me that too. I'm always curious what people end up doing in their own kitchens. If this video was useful, hit like. It really helps this channel reach more people who are dealing with the exact same questions you had walking in today. And if you're not subscribed yet, that's the best way to catch these videos as they come out, since I cover one topic like this every single week, always grounded in real research, never in hype. I get a lot of comments asking whether this kind of thing actually works, or whether it's just another wellness trend dressed up in nicer language. Fair question. I just point back to everything we walked through today. Fibroblasts, amino acids, vitamin C, copper, zinc, all of it studied, all of it measurable. This is basic biochemistry your body has been running since before you could talk, and all we're doing here is giving it the materials it's been quietly asking for. Now, I mentioned earlier that sugar has been working against everything we just covered this whole time, attaching itself to your collagen fibers and stiffening them up. What I didn't get into today is exactly how blood sugar spikes make that process so much worse. And there's one specific, ordinary food that blunts those spikes far more effectively than most people realize. And for that information, watch this video right here.